Okay. So on your screen, you can see the 4 assessments that I'm looking to have completed. All right. Hopefully, you've already finished measuring activity 1, which was the reading a tape measure, where the ruler was given to you. You just had to identify where the gray bar ended. Some people made a mistake with that assessment because they assumed the end of the ruler was 0, but it wasn't. So if you made that mistake, just go back and fix it. Measuring activity 2 is when you were supposed to measure your lines on the piece of paper and record the lengths in the computer on the attached document that I put in there. The assignment that we should have just completed, or you'll be completing at the end of today, is the Rocket Simulation Challenge, where you compared 5 different variables and you made changes to see how those changes affected the results, changing only 1 variable to keep it a valid experiment. Then you answered 5 questions down the bottom. The last thing is sketching. Right? So if I go into my Google Classroom and I click on my instructions, it's going to open up and it's going to give you 2 options to do your sketch. You can use the paper in your challenge packet and a pen and a pencil to freehand the sketch of your rocket from the front view. So if you look in the folder that I gave you when you gathered materials, you find the packet that says Water Rocket Design Challenge. If you open it up, you're going to see one of the pages says Water Rocket Sketch and Analysis. We're only concerned with the sketch. I give you a square or rectangular piece of graph paper in order for you to do your sketch in pencil and paper. If you feel better putting your ideas down on paper with pencil and paper. Or you can open up this template with Kami and then use the tools in the toolbox to do your sketch. So I can just, when it opens, I can just grab the paintbrush on the left-hand side. I grab my paintbrush. I might grab a blue, and I might make my ping pong ball right there. Then I might grab red, and I might make my cup just under it. Right? Or maybe you didn't have a ping pong ball. Maybe you used a cork. So I might do something like this. Now you notice I'm a little wavy there. It's okay to have wavy lines in sketches. I would probably erase that though and fix that one. That's a little bit too crazy wavy for me. Right? But you can do your sketch in one of 2 ways. Pencil and paper, or you can use Kami in the toolbox and just turn it in. If you do it pencil and paper, you are going to have to take a picture of your sketch and email me that picture, a nice close-up of it. If you would rather use another drawing app, that's okay with me also. Okay, feel free to use another drawing app and just make sure that you send the image to me. Right? Now I just want to go over sketching a little bit. Sketching and communicating in engineering, believe it or not, is really similar to communicating in your English class. Right? If you are given an assignment to do in English, the first thing you might do is to create a graphic organizer, some type of graphic organizer to get your ideas down on paper. Then you might do a rough draft. So the rough draft doesn't have to be perfect. You're maybe not using a computer. You're not concerned with spelling or grammar or punctuation yet. You're just getting your ideas down on paper. Then you're going to do the final document, maybe on Google Docs or Microsoft Word, and that's when it's going to be perfect. Well, engineering is the same thing, except engineers generally communicate visually with pictures. So in ELA, you're communicating often with words and written. In engineering, you're more concerned with communicating with pictures. So a thumbnail is very similar to a graphic organizer. A thumbnail is what engineers call your first ideas down on paper. They don't have to be the right size. You're not using a ruler. It just wants to be in proportion. Now, if you're an artist or you've had art, you kind of know what proportion means. Proportion is a fancy word for looking right, for everything being sized according to what you start your sketch with. So if you noticed, I started my sketch with the ping pong ball. The minute I drew the size of the ping pong ball, the cup had to be sized off of the ping pong ball. And I'll get a little bit more into that in a minute, but that's what proportion is. Proportion just means that it looks right. Everything is sized compared to everything else. Now, when you are designing, when an engineer is making something, you need to know 3 dimensions. You need to know length, height, and width. Otherwise, you can't make an object, right? Objects are 3-dimensional. If I don't know how long it is, I can't make the object if I don't know how high it is. So you need to know the length, the height, and the width. Now, when you look at something, you can look at it from 6 different views. I can look at it from the front, the back, the left side, the right side, the top, or the bottom. Now, an engineer doesn't have to draw or design all those views. You can get away most of the time with just 2 views. A top view, and if you look at myself in the presentation, you can see the top view of this rocket. Okay, it's the yellow cup. You can see the transition cone. You can see the fins sticking out. And then this is the front view. Well, this slide that I'm showing you right now, its purpose is to show you that the most important view should be the one that, without a question of a doubt, when somebody looks at it, they can identify what they're looking at almost immediately. So I'm going to show you a top view. So here is a top view of an object. Do you have any idea what that object is? If you do, unmute yourself because I have my screen pinned. What do you think that is? It's looking at it from the top, as if I was standing above it or on it or in a helicopter looking down on it. Anybody have a guess as to what that might be? Nobody?
A box.
Could be a box where the left rectangle is one flap of the box open, the right rectangle is the other flap of the box open, and the middle rectangle is the empty box. Because remember, when you're drawing something 2-dimensional, you have to imaginarily pretend like you're crushing the object into the piece of paper. Because this isn't 3-dimensional, all right? You're doing a 2-dimensional drawing. Could be a picnic table. That could be one of the benches, the other bench, and the part that your food would be on. Now, what if I show you the front view of this sketch? Now, what is it? Somebody unmute. What is it?
Staircase.
A staircase. So here's the top view of the stairs, and here's the front or side view of the stairs. So this rectangle on the right is the top stair. The rectangle in the middle is the second stair, and the rectangle on the end is the bottom stair. If I showed everybody in this school just the front view sketch of this, everybody would tell me it's a set of stairs. Nobody has ever looked at the top view and told me that it was a set of stairs, ever. Let's try another one. Here's a top view. Right? If it was a front view, I would say it's a dartboard. But it's not. It's looking down on something. It's the bird's eye view. What do you think that might be? I did have somebody in the last class guess what it was for the first time ever. Nobody has ever guessed what the front view of that object is. Anybody have a guess?
A fountain.
Could be a fountain. Anybody else have a guess?
Something stacked on top of each other.
I've had people say a wedding cake. If you were looking down on the top of a 3-layered wedding cake, you got the top layer, you got the middle layer, you got the bottom layer of the cake. But now what is it? It's a snowman, looking at it from the top. Now, if this object had a line coming off, a line coming off, and a line coming off, you could say that it would be the top view of a rocket. And those lines would have been showing up as fins. But the point is, the front view leaves no question to a viewer what the sketch is showing. Sketches are usually done in seconds. All right? You don't waste a lot of time with a sketch. Once an engineer does his thumbnail, he makes modifications and changes, and then he might do a rough sketch, make final changes, and then they'll do a final drawing. Right? He or she will use rulers, perfect lines, perfect measurements, and it will be done to scale. All right? Just like English language arts, when you're doing a graphic organizer, a rough draft, and a final draft. What about the last one? Remember in engineering, we said a dotted line means one of two things. Either it's going to be folded or there's something underneath it that's hidden and you can't see. So what could that be showing? If there's something hidden underneath.
A table.
Could be a table. Excellent. Somebody in the last class said it could be a table, but if it had legs, there would be a dotted circle in the upper left corner, a dotted circle in the right corner, a dotted circle in the lower two corners. So this one would be a desk on top of some cabinets. All right. What if I show you this? Where the left rectangle is this part of the roof from the top view. The right rectangle is this part of the roof. And the house is just a basic, boring old square house. All right. So again, the point of that slide was that the front view or the side view should be the view that nobody misconstrues. Everybody knows what it's showing. So that's one of the first things that's important with sketching. It's done freehand, and it should be the view and a sloppy copy of what you're trying to communicate. This next slide goes over proportion, which means that the object should look right. So let's take Sean. Now let's take Luke. Luke pays attention most of the time, but Luke can be a little mischievous. He can be kind of a wise guy once in a while. So I've got this huge square area that I'm giving you to do your sketch in. Luke decides to make his ping pong ball this tiny in the upper left-hand corner, just because he wants to be a smart aleck. He's going to make a really tiny ping pong ball. Well, the minute he makes that ping pong ball, that determines how big all the rest of his pieces are going to be. So if his ping pong ball is that tiny, his cup has to be that small, his paper towel tube, the transition cone, the bottle, the angled part of the bottle, and then the drinking part of the bottle. So when you're doing your sketch of your rocket, I like to separate it into its pieces. Now, maybe you didn't use a ping pong ball. Maybe you used the yellow cup upside down. Maybe you didn't use the yellow cup at all. All right? So your sketch wants to represent all the pieces, but it also wants to be in proportion. The minute you draw the first or sketch the first part of your rocket, everything else is sized off of it. Now I'm going to show one fin coming out the side, because remember, it's two-dimensional. Don't try to show fins three-dimensionally. If I smush this rocket into the ground with a steamroller, the fin would look like it's coming off the edge. Same with this one. Now, if I had 3 or 4 fins, how do you show the one fin that sticks out at you? How do you show that on a two-dimensional drawing? Anybody want to unmute? How would I show that third or fourth fin?
Just a line.
Just a straight line. Perfect. So this sketch right here, I have to grade this based on what I know about sketching. Freehand, sloppy copy. It has to have all the pieces, which this one does. It has to be in proportion, which this one is. What would you give this sketch? Would you give it a high grade or a low grade? Anybody?
I would give it a pretty high grade.
I would give it probably a 98, almost 100. The only thing I would say would be use more of the workspace. I'm old. I turned 54 today. I don't want to be staring at these little tiny sketches. So a sketch should also try to utilize most of the workspace. So the sample that I'm showing you on my screen might be a little hard to see, but I use up this whole piece of graph paper that is in your packet if you choose to do it pencil and paper. So now we've got, let's say we've got Greta. Greta is perfect. She pays attention all the time. She knows that the minute she draws this ping pong ball about the size of a quarter, that everything else has to be sized off of that. And she has this much workspace to fit her rocket in. So she draws the ping pong ball the size of a quarter, which means now her cup is going to look like that. The tube, the transition cone, and then she says, I'm done with my transition cone. I've still got about half of my space left, which makes sense because when you look at your rocket, about half of it is from the bottom of the transition cone to the top of the rocket, either half or a little more than half. So this is a pretty good sketch so far. She puts her bottle, the angled part of her bottle, the drinking part, and then fin, fin, fin. That sketch is almost too good. Right? A sketch wants to be something quick. If this were a final drawing, it would be perfect. Right? But everything's in proportion. She utilized the entire workspace, and it looks really, really good. Right? Now we got Grace J. She is never paying attention. She's got the attention span of a black fly. She's the kind of person who 1 minute could be looking at your screen and the next minute, oh, there's a squirrel. Oh, I heard a sound. So she decides that she's going to make her ping pong ball the size of the moon. Even though she's only got this much space, she decides to make a gigantic ping pong ball on the top. And if that's not bad enough, because she wasn't paying attention, she makes her cup that small. Then she does her paper towel tube, then her transition cone, then her bottle. Well, now she ran out of space. So at this point, if she hasn't figured out that she's got some problems with her sketch and the proportion of it, then her problem is she ran out of space. Well, if you guys run out of space, you can do one of two things. You can't shorten stuff. You can actually sketch down into the words. So if you're doing a pencil and paper sketch, or you're doing the tool sketch with Cami or another app, feel free to go down into the words. That's okay. I don't care. I just don't want you to shorten it and make it look funny. Or you could tape another piece of paper to the bottom and continue. All right. The other thing would be Thomas. Thursday, we're getting a lot of snow, and that's going to be Thomas's snowman. Small bottom, big middle, medium-sized head. Obviously, that's not in proportion. So the purpose of this sketch, of this slide, was to make sure that you're sketching in proportion. You use the maximum amount of workspace you can, and you have all the pieces. This last one, when I look at this sketch, a couple things look funny to me. First of all, I noticed a sharp, pointy nose cone right away, and I know I didn't give you something pointy. I gave you a ping pong ball and the cup. That's it. I also looks to me like this tube is way too short, and it looks like this is what I call the neck. The neck is really, really long. But the problem is they were supposed to be like that. This person used a 3D printer. This person cut the tube shorter, and this person had a green Perrier drinking bottle. And those green bottles sometimes have long necks on them. So this sketch is actually perfect. But if they didn't add notes to tell me about these weird things, I would have taken points off. So anything out of the ordinary, you want to make sure that you put notes. All right? So if I'm sketching the rocket that I have in front of me, this rocket used the tiny, tiny bottle. So it's going to look a little funny when I do the sketch. The bottle's going to look a little bit stubby, a little short, but it's supposed to. Now, also, if you notice, I made a rectangular bottle. That's okay if you're not a good artist and you don't want to do the curved part of your bottle, then just use a plain rectangle for the bottle. You don't have to curve it if you don't want to. I can barely sketch stick figures, so I would be happy to make a rectangular bottle. Right? So where we are now is you have 4 things that we need to finish to complete the water rocket challenge. Hopefully you're done with the first 3. If not, you finish them, make corrections on them, get them submitted in, then you're ready to start your sketch. We said you can do one of 2 things for your sketch. You can do it on pencil and paper with the graph paper that I put in your challenge packet, or another piece of paper if you wish. Or you can come to Kami and open up that template that I have right there and use your tool, drawing tool. Okay, maybe I want to make my paper towel tube blue. So I'm going to draw that as best I can. I know some of the lines are wavy, but hey, I'm just doing the best I can. I'm going to go to this orange color, and I'm going to draw my transition cone. I'm going to come to this fuchsia color, and I'm going to draw my bottle. Whoa, a little bit wavy there because I'm using my mouse, but hey, it's just a sketch. Then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to grab black, and I'm going to do the angled part. And then I might grab this ugly yellow and do the drinking part. Then I'm going to add my fins. Let's go with this red. So maybe I've got a fin that comes down, down, down. Come over here, down, down, down. And then I've got 4 fins, so I'm just going to put that line right there. I can't see the one that's behind it. That's a good enough sketch. Right? It's in proportion. It's got all the pieces, and it looks right. Right? So you can do it on the document that I put into your Google Classroom.
What should I do because I didn't finish my rocket?